So we have really persistent inequities, racial and other inequities that exist and are ever more prevalent in our country broadly, but in education specifically. And I think the current social political context has made those ever more present. And so it's not new. But I think it's in some ways been exacerbated, and a lot of the reforms that we've seen through the years haven't done a whole lot to address those inequities. So that's one of the things that we wanted to conceptualize around a little bit about how might we move beyond the current set of ideas and assumptions at play in how we address these kinds of inequities. So Dr. Sola Takahashi and I co-wrote a piece exploring the ways in which parents and teachers are both theoretically critical partners in education and addressing educational inequities, and also at the same time often pitted against each other. Willard Waller famously talked about them as natural enemies. And so really trying to think about those roles and push beyond the default ways that parents and teachers have interacted, and to recognize that the ways that schools are structured shape how we interact in particular ways that are often racialized. So we have this sort of notion of African American parents as problem parents, and then the behaviors that get played out in relation to educators for one set of parents, often parents of color, get interpreted as problematic by educators, whereas similar kinds of advocacy behaviors for children get interpreted from white parents. Other also it has class dimensions, often get interpreted by educators as helpful forms of engagement. And so really trying to push on that a little bit and think about how can parents and teachers work together towards a kind of transformative agency together in terms of improving education and systems. I think that my hope is really that we open the door to multiple possibilities, that a lot of our thinking, sometimes we get in a bit of a rut about what's possible and the ways to go about it. And so long as we have this kind of narrow notion of individual self-interest that's at the heart of our notions of how people learn or change or grow, or how education will change and transform, then we can be really limited in what we think are the possibilities. So really trying to open the door and to cut across what I've named as a lot of different kinds of borders or boundaries between, sometimes it's disciplines, it could be urban and rural, it could be university community, it could be parents and teachers, but trying to think beyond those boundaries, not in sort of superficial ways about like, oh, we're all the same or we all want the same thing, but to really think hard about how individual self-interest might only be one motivating factor, that we might think about centering our differences as a source of strength, that we might think about expanding this notion of interest, that we might think about how we can build solidarities across different communities or across different boundaries, and by doing so be able to reframe the possibilities for transformative change in schools.